You noticed, right? You realized that the silence of your choices began to unsettle those who always saw you as predictable, as if you were always there, available, fitted in, molded, aligned with everything they expected from you, but you started to pull away. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't disdain. It wasn't indifference. It was just a calling, a deep discomfort that told you, this place no longer represents you. These conversations no longer nourish you. This routine no longer reveals you. And you tried to resist for a while. You tried to convince yourself that everything was fine. You even tried to smile to avoid appearing ungrateful. But your body began to react. Your thoughts started to implode. And your soul began to suffocate in a space where your presence was decorative but never truly felt. That's when you decided to disappear. And the world didn't understand a thing. They called it drama. They called it weakness. They even called it selfishness. You're running away, they said, as if you were afraid, as if your distance were cowardice. But those who feel what you felt, know. It wasn't running away. It was survival. Because you were slowly dying in a daily life that no one noticed was killing you. No one asked how you were really doing. No one noticed how much you smiled out of reflex and not out of truth. No one saw that every gesture of yours was a cry for help camouflaged as kindness. You got tired of trying to fit in. And those who tire of trying to fit in either explode or leave, and you chose to leave, not far from everything, but closer to yourself. Those who saw you leaving didn't understand. They accused you of abandonment, of absence, of coldness. But deep down, the truth is that they can only interpret as fleeing what they themselves never had the courage to seek. You, however, did not. You didn't run away. You set yourself free, and in that moment, they noticed your silence. But they didn't notice your courage. They looked at you with pity, but they didn't perceive your strength. They said you were lost. But they didn't realize that in reality, you were heading straight toward your truth. Have you ever been through that? Share with me in the comments. Some people only find themselves when they get lost. And you understood this on the day you looked around and didn't recognize anyone anymore. Not the faces, not the voices, not the version of yourself that everyone demanded you keep portraying. In that moment you realized your soul had already left. Your body was just going through the motions. It was then that you understood what it meant to leave, without running away. It wasn't about going away, it was about returning to yourself. Only no one understands that. Because no one wants to admit that sometimes the greatest form of courage is leaving behind everything that made sense to others, but never made sense to you. That was your choice. And it was a lonely one. And it was painful. But it was also liberating. Because in that moment you stepped away. You weren't saying goodbye. You were saying, now it's my turn. You realized that, didn't you? In the silence, in the journey, in the distance, in the place where nobody knew you. Far from the gazes that labeled you. Far from the roles that trapped you. Far from the performance. For the first time, you could exist. Without explanations. And that's where the true reunion begins. In the space where no one expects you. In the time where you no longer need to conform. In the landscape where you can just breathe and observe, yes, observe what remained, what hurt you, what you wanted to leave behind, and what, finally, you wanted to start becoming. If this touched you, comment, I needed to hear this. You began to go back inside, slowly, silently, deeply. You started to revisit memories that had been dormant. You began to hear your own voice without external noise. You started to remember what made you vibrate, before you had to please. And in this process, you realized that getting lost was the best path to remember who you've always been. Yes, that child, that intuitive teenager, that dreamy woman, they were there. Somewhere inside you, waiting for a little space, a pause, an invitation, and the distance you created from the world was exactly that invitation. But the world will never applaud that, because the world doesn't value those who choose to be free. The world idolizes those who fit in, and you weren't born to fit in, you were born to overflow. That's why it's so difficult to be understood. That's why they will always say you're running away, because it's easier to judge your absence than to question their own stagnation. They said you were running away, but the only thing you fled from was the lie they forced you to live. The rest was a reunion. It was a rebirth. It was truth. Finish this sentence. Being misunderstood in Brazil is, and there's even more. Because in this process, you realize that there's a kind of solitude that isn't punishment, it's medicine. There's a distance that doesn't separate, it liberates, and there's an absence that isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of truth. You began to notice the signs, those little invisible movements that showed you how alive you were. Finally alive. Your eyes changed, your breathing changed, your perception of time changed. You weren't in a hurry. You didn't need to prove anything. You didn't need to answer to anyone. You were with yourself, and it's in this state that the spiritual world starts to act. It's here that you begin to receive answers without even having asked questions. It's here that synchronicities arise, the unexpected reunions, the phrases that give you chills, the silences that embrace you. You start to see everything differently, and this verb, to perceive, becomes sacred. Have you heard that phrase before? Comment. I have indeed. But there's still something that maybe you haven't admitted to yourself. Your departure was also a test to see who truly loved you and who only loved what you represented. Because when you went, some disappeared, others judged you. A few pretended not to notice, but there were those who waited for you, respected you, recognized you, even from afar. And those people, you'll know they will never lose you again, because those who love your essence aren't scared of your process, don't demand your presence, give you space, and space is the greatest form of love someone can offer to someone who is trying to find themselves again. If this video moved you, write a word that defines you right now. Do you remember the moment you decided to go? Not the exact moment of the ticket, the backpack, the road, but the internal instant, the silent yes that you gave to your soul, even without knowing where you were headed. That was when everything started to change. The world remained the same, but you were no longer the same. Because when the soul decides to leave, the body just obeys. And when the soul cries out for reunion, there's no excuse that serves as a cage. But you know what's the strangest part? It was exactly in that place where you didn't know anyone that you began to remember who you were. Far from the comfort zone, far from the social version, far from the pressures. You realized that your loss of direction was the beginning of your true path. How many times did you look around and think, I don't know what I'm doing here, but at the same time, felt an unexplainable peace? That's it. Because it wasn't about the physical place. It was about the energy of freedom, about the permission to be, about the internal space that new territory allowed you to access. And then came the first cry, the first long night, the first old memory that emerged without warning, and you realized you were coming back, not to home, but to your origin. You started walking in a different way. You began to look at the sky as if communicating with something greater. Started smiling without an audience. It was there in that nothing that you finally realized all the everything you were carrying. Have you been through this? Tell me in the comments. That strange place was, in fact, the perfect mirror of your healing. Because true reunion never happens in a predictable location. It requires discomfort. It requires letting go. It requires absence of control. It was only when you stopped trying to understand that you truly began to feel. And then everything gained new contours. The simple street seemed sacred. The hot coffee felt like a ritual. The sound of your own footsteps was music. And the silence became a friend, a mentor, a companion. You no longer needed to escape the noise. Because it was no longer outside. It was within. And now you were cleansing, turning off, uninstalling systems that weren't yours. Do you know that feeling of awakening? It doesn't come with fireworks. It comes with awareness, with that inner whisper that says, you no longer have to be what they expected. And there, in that very moment, you felt light, even carrying wounds, even without all the answers, because for the first time, you didn't need to understand the world. You just needed to allow yourself. If this resonated with you, comment, I needed to hear this. And in the midst of it all, something magical happened. You realized you didn't need to go back, not to that place, not to that old role, not to that cycle they called life, because your reunion was not a destination. It was a state of presence, a way of being. You could keep moving, as long as you didn't lose sight of what you discovered. And what is it that you found after all? Your peace, your solitude, your truth. You realized you were never alone. You were with yourself. And that was everything. Time ceased to be a tyrant. The clock no longer gave you orders. The urgencies of others no longer dictated your worth. You were free. Do you realize that? Free to say no. Free to say, I don't know yet. Free to say, today, I don't want to please anyone. And this freedom frightened many people, because your freedom is a reminder of what they gave up. Have you ever experienced something like this? Share your thoughts in the comments, but now, here comes the deepest point of all. The place where you got lost was the same place where you left pieces of yourself years ago. And now, as you return to yourself, you've begun to gather each and every one of them. The laughter you swallowed, the art you abandoned, the desire you suppressed, the intuition you discredited. It was all there waiting for you. And this place wasn't just geographical, it was symbolic, it was spiritual, it was the landscape of your soul, it was the invisible map of your true story. You realized this when you sat alone and for the first time didn't miss anything, neither anyone, nor explanations, nor approval. You understood that you were enough, whole, even while feeling incomplete. And that feeling was the healing. Comment a heart if you're on this journey with me. But there's more. You know that person who thought you were running away? They're still trying to reach you through an old version of yourself. They still project the you from before, the available, the nice one, the predictable. But that version you left behind, in that place where they said you got lost, but where in reality you found yourself. Today, when someone tells you you've changed, you smile, because you know it's not change, it's revelation. You didn't become someone else, you just stopped hiding who you've always been, and those who can't handle your truth never deserved your presence. Does this make sense to you so far? Write yes down below. And here's an uncomfortable truth: if you hadn't walked away, you would still be betraying yourself today. You would be pretending to be well, memorizing phrases, forcing smiles, dimming your own inner signals in the name of stability. But stability is not synonymous with peace, and you discovered this the hard way. Feeling peace only when you distanced yourself. So today, don't apologize, don't be ashamed, don't go back, unless it's to reclaim something that's yours, unless your presence today is a choice and not a prison. You thought that by meeting everything would fall into place, that you would finally find peace, that the answers would come softly. But the truth is that the most genuine reunion of your life was also the most painful, because reuniting is not like in the books, it's not magical, it's not romantic, it's brutal. It's looking in the mirror and realizing everything you allowed, everything you accepted silently, everything you tolerated out of fear of being rejected. It's facing the pieces you broke in the name of bonds. It's hearing your own voice after years of silence and recognizing that it wasn't others who hurt you, it was you, abandoning yourself. And when this realization hits, there's no turning back. You see that it wasn't about running away, it never was, you just couldn't pretend anymore. You just didn't know how to keep fitting into a world that demanded your domesticated version, but never wanted to know your soul. And so, you left, thinking you were freeing yourself, and you were. But what no one tells you is that freedom also hurts. Because to be who you truly are, you will need to bury who you used to pretend to be. And this mourning goes unseen. You cry alone, you doubt yourself, you miss people who no longer fit in your presence. You feel guilty for not wanting to return. You feel scared to move forward without a guide, because now there's no more manual, no more approval, no more applause. There's just you and your truth, raw, alive, pulsating. And this, at times, feels scarier than the comfortable lies of the past. But there's something you need to realize. All the pain you feel now is not a sign of error. It's a sign of alignment. It's your emotional body reorganizing after years of noise. It's your soul showing you what has always been wrong. It's your intuition starting to scream again after so long of being silenced. Yes, there will be nostalgia. Yes, there will be days of doubt, but don't go back. Your old life was too small for your new awareness. And the people who loved you for your submission, you don't deserve your freedom. If you go back now, it will be out of fear, not out of love. And you've spent so long trying not to disturb. Now it's time to admit, those who are bothered by your healing never wanted your truth, only your performance, and you weren't born to be anyone's emotional entertainment. You were born to live fully, with internal dignity, with awareness. And now that you realize, you can't pretend anymore, you can't smile to maintain connections, you can't keep your head down for the sake of peace. You can't bear guilt that isn't yours. Because in the end, what you found wasn't a new place, it was a new awareness. It was a new field of presence. And this is something you can't unsee. Those who looked at you and thought you were running away now see you strong, quiet, different, and they don't understand, but you understand because now you know you weren't escaping. You were returning to your roots, returning to your essence, returning to your most complete self. Pain is part of it. Discomfort is part of it. But now you can handle it because it's your soul that sustains you. If this touched something deep within you, comment, "I needed to hear this." But this is just part of the story. I'll see you in the next video.